I grew up learning how to be small without disappearing. In my family, that was a skill. My parents praised stability, predictability, the kind of success you could explain quickly to neighbors. My brother, Evan, fit that shape perfectly. He followed the map, shook the right hands, brought home promotions and polite girlfriends. I loved him, truly, but loving him meant standing next to a spotlight that never once turned in my direction. I was the other one. The daughter who asked questions at dinner, who left home early, who chose work that didn't come with an easy title. When relatives asked what I did, my mother would answer for me, smoothing the edges. "She's figuring things out," she'd say, the way people talk about a temporary illness. My days were quiet but full. I rented a narrow apartment above a bakery that started work before sunrise. I liked waking up to the sound of delivery trucks and the smell of bread. My job paid enough, demanded focus, and required discretion. I didn't talk about it much, not because I was ashamed, but because I learned early that explanation invited judgment. So I let them think what they wanted. Family gatherings followed a script. Evan's accomplishments floated through the room like polished trophies. My choices were footnotes. No one was cruel. That was the hardest part. Disappointment delivered softly still lands. Over time, I became a shorthand for caution. Don't take risks like her. Don't wait too long. Don't wander. When Evan announced his engagement, everyone celebrated with relief, as if another box had been checked. His fiancée, Claire, was lovely in a composed, observant way. She listened more than she spoke, which I respected. The first time we met, she studied me with curiosity that felt different from the others. Not dismissive. Measuring. The engagement dinner was held at my parents' house. All warm lighting and rehearsed laughter. I arrived on time, carrying a bottle of wine I'd chosen carefully. My mother hugged me, then adjusted my collar, a habit she never quite broke. "You look tired," she said, concerned but pointed. I smiled and said I'd been busy. At the table, conversation flowed around me. Plans, venues, careers. Someone joked about how everyone eventually lands somewhere, even laughed and glanced at me, not unkindly, just unaware. "Some of us take the scenic route," he said. The table agreed. Claire didn't laugh. She looked at me instead, her brow tightening slightly, as if she'd heard a wrong note. Later, while plates were being cleared and voices rose with wine, she asked me about my work. I gave my usual careful answer. Her questions sharpened, precise and informed in a way that made my pulse shift. I noticed my father watching us, uneasy. My mother changed the subject too quickly. Claire went quiet, her eyes returning to my face, then to my hands, as if confirming something. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thinner. She opened her mouth, hesitated, and then said my name the way you do when a realization clicks into place. And in that pause, just before she spoke again, I understood that the story my family told about me was about to strain under its own weight. Claire didn't finish her sentence. Someone dropped a fork, and the moment slipped away, but it didn't disappear. It settled. I felt it in the way she watched me afterward. Careful now, recalibrating. The rest of the evening carried on, but something had shifted its center of gravity. After dinner, Evan cornered me near the back porch, the screen door tapping softly in the summer air. He asked how things were going, the way people ask when they've already decided the answer. I told him I was fine. He nodded, relieved. Fine was manageable. Fine meant he didn't have to ask more. My parents were quieter than usual that night. My mother moved through the kitchen with purpose, cleaning surfaces that were already clean. My father avoided my eyes. When I hugged them goodbye, his hand lingered on my shoulder, heavy with something unspoken. I walked out into the dark feeling like I'd just passed, through a place that no longer recognized me. Over the next few weeks, small things began to surface. My mother called more often, asking gentle questions that circled my work without landing on it. Evan sent articles he thought might help. Opportunities to pivot, to stabilize. None of it was malicious. It was worse than that. It was protective, as if they were bracing for a collapse that had already happened in their minds. At work, My days were steady, predictable in the ways that mattered. I handled information, reviewed documents, followed procedures that existed for a reason. People trusted me because I didn't dramatize outcomes. I didn't rush. I knew how to wait. There was comfort in that, being competent in a room where competence was the currency. One afternoon, I saw Claire's name appear unexpectedly in an email chain, a professional inquiry, formal but unmistakably hers. I read it twice to be sure. She was careful, but the subtext was clear. She knew exactly who I was now, or at least enough to ask the right questions. I replied with the same calm precision I used for everyone else. From that point on, she started appearing at the edges of my life. A coffee invitation that sounded casual. A question passed through Evan that felt rehearsed. Each interaction was polite, restrained, but charged. She was gathering context. I recognized the method because I used it too. At the next family gathering, the dynamic had changed. Conversations paused when I entered the room, then restarted with exaggerated normalcy. My aunt asked if I was still doing that thing, waving her hand vaguely. Before I could answer, my mother stepped in. "She's busy," she said quickly. "Very busy." Claire watched this unfold, her expression unreadable. Later, she found me alone on the patio. The night was cool, the hum of insects steady and grounding. She stood beside me, not too close. "Your family worries about you," she said carefully. "I know," I replied. She hesitated. "They don't really know you." It wasn't an accusation. It was an observation. One that landed harder than anything said that night. Inside, laughter rose too loudly. Evan's voice carried, confident, assured. I looked at the familiar scene through the glass, and felt the distance clearly now. Not emotional, but structural. Built over years of assumptions and quiet omissions. Claire turned to me again, as if weighing a decision. "There are things people assume when they think they understand a story," she said, "and things they miss." I met her gaze, steady. "Yes," I said, "there are." She nodded once, slowly. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about being underestimated anymore. It was about what happens when the truth starts to surface, and who gets caught standing in its path. After that night, my family began treating me like a fragile object, valuable in theory, dangerous in practice. Invitations came with disclaimers. Phone calls were padded with concern. My mother asked if I was sleeping enough. My father forwarded listings for jobs he thought were more secure. Evan tried humor, the kind meant to smooth over discomfort. None of them asked me directly what I did or why I'd chosen it. They preferred the version of me that stayed vague. Claire was the exception. She never pushed, but she noticed everything. When she spoke to me now, it was with deliberation, as if each word had weight. She stopped asking general questions and started asking precise ones, about timelines, systems, processes. Not personal. Professional. I answered truthfully, carefully, within the boundaries I'd spent years learning not to cross. One afternoon, she met me for coffee near my office. She chose the place, neutral ground. We sat by the window while people moved past outside, unaware of how contained the air felt between us. "I didn't mean to put you in an uncomfortable position," she said after a moment. "You didn't," I replied. "Recognition does that on its own." She exhaled, almost relieved. "I thought so." She didn't explain what she'd recognized. She didn't have to. We both understood the language of restraint. Instead, she told me about wedding stress, about Evan's impatience with details, about how my parents wanted everything to look a certain way. I listened. It was easier than speaking. As weeks passed, the wedding plans became the central gravity of my family's world. Every conversation orbited around seating charts, finances, optics. I was assigned small tasks, errands, confirmations, nothing that required trust, just availability. I complied without protest. It was useful to be overlooked. At work, things grew more complicated. Not chaotic, just layered. Files intersected in ways they shouldn't have. Names repeated. Patterns emerged. I documented everything, as I always did. Procedure demanded it. Integrity required it. I didn't attach emotion to the process. Emotion clouds judgment. One evening, my mother called, her voice tight. She asked if I could come by. "Your father's worried," she said. "We all are." When I arrived, they sat me down like an intervention without accusations. They spoke in generalities, about safety, reputation, family. Evan was there too, arms crossed, eyes earnest. He said he just wanted to help me. Before things got complicated. I asked what they meant by complicated. Silence answered. That was when I understood the full shape of it. They weren't worried about me failing anymore. They were worried about what my success might expose, the way it didn't fit their narrative, the way it could disrupt carefully arranged truths. I didn't argue. I thanked them for their concern. I promised nothing. Later that night, Claire texted me a single sentence. "They don't see the whole picture." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. They never asked for it. As the wedding approached, the tension settled into something quieter, more dangerous. Smiles sharpened. Conversations became strategic. I could feel the weight of unasked questions pressing in from all sides. And for the first time, I knew with certainty that whatever was coming next wouldn't be accidental. The week before the wedding arrived with forced cheer and brittle patience. My parents' house, filled with boxes and lists, and the low hum of anxiety disguised as excitement. Everyone was performing a version of themselves they thought the moment required. I watched it all quietly, moving where I was asked, saying little, noting everything. Evan was restless. He paced more than usual, snapping at small inconveniences, checking his phone too often. When he spoke to me, it was with an odd mix of reassurance and warning, as if he wasn't sure which role I was meant to play anymore. Once, while we stood alone in the kitchen, he asked me outright if everything was okay with me. I told him yes. He studied my face, searching for cracks. He didn't find any, and that seemed to unsettle him more than if he had. Claire, on the other hand, had gone quiet. Not distant, intent. She observed the family, the way someone studies a structure they're about to enter, noting which beams are load-bearing and which are decorative. When our eyes met across a room, there was no longer curiosity there. There was understanding. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private venue, all glass and soft lighting, meant to suggest transparency. Speeches were made about unity, about how families come together. My mother cried at the right moments. My father beamed. Evan thanked everyone for believing in him. No one mentioned me. I sat at the edge of the table, hands folded, listening. I didn't feel hurt. I felt detached, the way you do when you've already finished a chapter, but are still reading the last few pages out of courtesy. After dessert, Claire excused herself and followed me outside onto the terrace. The city lights below were steady, indifferent. She leaned against the railing, careful to keep her voice low. "You know they're scared," she said. "Yes," I answered. "Not of you," she clarified. "Off what changes if they're wrong?" That landed cleanly. I nodded once. She turned to face me fully. "I need to know something," she said. "Before tomorrow." I waited. "Are you prepared for what happens if the truth doesn't stay contained?" I thought of my files. My records. The years of choosing patience over recognition. I thought of every softened comment, every redirected question, every assumption left uncorrected, because correcting it too early would have cost more than waiting. "Yes," I said. She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Good." Inside, laughter erupted again. Too loud, too rehearsed. My family celebrating a version of certainty they desperately wanted to believe in. Claire straightened, smoothing her dress. "Tomorrow," she said carefully, "things will make sense. For everyone." I watched her walk back inside, slipping seamlessly into place beside Evan, smiling like nothing was amiss. I stayed where I was, breathing in the night air, calm and steady, because by then, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was ready.